Today, I'm happy to introduce someone who represents an organization called Students Against Destructive Decisions. Now, the students today are the future leaders. They are the ones who are going to be doing what we do today. So, this is really a conversation that I'm looking forward to. My guest today is Armaan Gill. He's from Colorado, and he'll be attending the University of Colorado in Denver this fall, majoring in microbiology. Armaan, how are you? So happy to have you with us today.
Hi, I'm doing good. It's nice to be here.
Tell me first about yourself and your journey. When and why did you join the Students Against Destructive Decisions? What draws you to it?
So I joined SADD just over 4 years ago. It was at the beginning of my freshman year of high school. It was in about September, and I initially joined just because I saw it as a great way to become a part of a larger organization and to volunteer and support larger initiatives like distracted driving and substance abuse. And in Colorado specifically, I think you can see a lot of these problems just because of the legalization of marijuana, the unique road systems in the state, the varying elevations which you'll find. So I just wanted to become a part of it just because I saw how prevalent issues like that were in my own community because I live in a rural town. So a lot of things like fatalities, substance use, it's just more prevalent within communities like mine. So I just saw it as a great way to become involved and support causes which I was passionate about.
Commend you for starting that as a freshman in high school. That's very far-seeing of you, and that's very mature of you. I was having a conversation earlier with somebody about teen driving behaviors. The fact is that when somebody has just started driving, it takes a long time for them to become used to it and become a good driver. Like with everything we do, it's not just about driving. Anything we do, it takes time. So I'm glad that you started doing that. You mentioned the rural community and you said fatalities. Why is that? Those of us who may not be familiar with what makes a difference like that. Help us understand why is there a higher prevalence of that in a rural community? Because one would think that you're dealing with lesser traffic.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree. I think in cities, you have just more vehicles in general. But within rural communities, I think the type of vehicle which you'll find is a lot different. Just because I think in cities, if even if you have a higher chance of getting in an accident, it's with a smaller vehicle, so fatalities won't be as high. Well, in a rural community, whenever you're making a turn onto a road, there's going to be dozens of semis just in your way. There might be tractors, combines, just really large and vehicles that have numerous blind spots and are just hard to navigate in general. So I think in rural communities, young drivers are especially at risk just because they're kind of overestimating their abilities. And then in a lot of drivers' education classes, they really don't talk about how different it is to drive on the road with large vehicles compared to other smaller cars like SUVs and sedans. So I think in rural communities, you just face larger and deadlier vehicles than compared to cities.
That is so true. You have county roads and state roads in rural
Yeah.
communities. In cities, you have city streets which have a lower traffic speed and posted speed. And whereas there's a lot of congestion, a lot of those crashes are low speed crashes. And unfortunately, that is not the case when you're living in a rural community. So Colorado has its own experiences of risks. You mentioned a little bit about the legalization of marijuana, but let's talk in general about distracted driving, impaired driving, whether it's due to drugs or whether it's due to alcohol, and what high risk behaviors concern you most among your peers and why?
I definitely think it's so like technology usage just in general. Um, because I think a lot of people don't have as much stigma or don't have as much worry about using their phone while driving compared to, let's say, driving while impaired with substances or different things like that. So I think a lot of people are just more willing to use their phones, to scroll through social media, or to be on the phone with someone while they're driving. I think it's especially just common among teens just because how much higher our social media and technology usage is. I think another just rising issue is how many more vehicles have those large touchscreen displays on their dashboards. Just because I think a lot of people are now getting more distracted trying to use that and navigate that instead of actually paying attention to their surroundings and to their vehicle. Um, and I just think it's kind of a just a compounding issue with all of that. I think I mentioned before about about our unique road system too. I think that also plays a role just because even if you're distracted for a couple seconds, if you're driving on a mountain pass, those couple of seconds can make a really big impact because you might be driving into the ditch or you might even be driving just closer to the edge of the road. So I think in Colorado specifically and teens as a whole, it's really important just to be aware at all times. Because just a couple of seconds at looking at your phone to see who's calling you, to see who's texting you, can mean all the difference. Whether or not you're going to get in a crash, or whether or not you're going to drive off the road, or anything else like that. So,
Yeah, that's quite the dilemma, what you just talked about. Cars today are safer than cars from many years ago because of all the technology available. But part of that technology is also those large displays, which are supposed to help us, but they have also become a distraction. So ultimately, it comes down to somebody making the right choice, right? I mean, a vehicle is a dangerous thing to operate if you don't operate it safely. And cell phones, whereas they are powerful and they help us, can cause so many issues when it comes to driving and being distracted. So, is is uh, is using a cell phone in a vehicle in Colorado considered a primary offense? Do you know that?
I think it is because I know well this happened pretty recently, but they've started putting up larger signs on the highways and interstates telling people to put down their phones. So I'm pretty sure it's become an offense. But well, I live on the like nexus of two major highways. So it's nice being able to see that the state is doing something to kind of tell drivers to put down your phones and become more aware of your surroundings. A lot of those signs do become more I don't know, visible at night, just because there's more lights around them. So that's nice to see that the state and the Colorado Department of Transportation is doing more to kind of tell drivers to put down their phones. So,
Indeed, that'd be great. And the more visibility, the more we become to seeing these signs that tell us what to do, the more apt we are to perhaps learn something and obey those signs. Uh, Data shows that there are 18 deaths per day in the United States, with teens accounting for a disproportionate share of fatal crashes. And you talk about some of the issues that you have seen in your community you talk about how 1 or 2 seconds on the cell phone can create so many issues. But in your view, why are young drivers particularly vulnerable? And what steps can SADD take to make a tangible impact?
so I think young drivers are more at risk just because of the inexperience many of us have on the road. To get a license, I think in Colorado, I did 50 hours of driving behind the wheel. And in the grand scheme of things, that necessarily isn't a lot. And young drivers just don't know how to anticipate and behave when they face unexpected situations. What do they do if they suddenly have a deer come across, jump in front of them while they're driving? And I think a lot of young drivers also kind of overestimate their abilities when they're driving as well. So they might make risky maneuvers or they might attempt maneuvers which they necessarily haven't practiced before. And I think that just comes with inexperience. They're like, well, they just overestimate their abilities and they think they're capable of doing stuff like that. And the data shows that they might not necessarily be able to do a lot of that stuff. And I think with SAT specifically, we can make a tangible impact by continuing to reach out to students and reminding them about defensive driving. They talk about that a lot in driver's education courses. But I think with SAD, we can have that more peer-to-peer influence and kind of more just stabilize and lay that as a foundational idea that as a younger driver, you need to be more defensive when driving. And even if you think you can make a turn before another vehicle gets in your way, while you might want to wait that additional couple 10, 20 seconds just because it's the safer option. And I just can think continuing to reinforce those ideas through our various programs helps students become more aware and also just continue to learn about the different risks which they have while they're driving.
So, as you said, that it's not like they're bad drivers. It's not like they're doing something bad. Experience. It's about experience, and the more you drive, the more experience you'll get. Maybe that's why teen drivers are more susceptible um, to perils and the dangers on the road. You also mentioned drivers ed. Do you think that drivers ed courses today are doing enough, not just from a technical perspective of driving, but also do you think they're doing enough about teaching young drivers and new drivers that what's out there today is worse than what was there before? The extra dangers, the consoles that take your eyes off the road, things like that. Do you think there's enough focus on that, just teaching them that there are added distractions today as compared to years in past?
Um, I definitely think a lot of driver's education material is a bit outdated. But I think another issue is that not not everyone necessarily has to take a driver's education course, or the format of those courses has changed pretty significantly in the past decade. So, for instance, I took an in-person driver's education class at my high school, but there's also another online option where you can just kind of read through the material and then you can take the quizzes or assessments that come with each of those modules. So I definitely think that transition to a more online format has negatively impacted driver's education. Just because now I think it's reached a point where students might not necessarily have to read, or they might not necessarily fully understand a lot of the concepts being discussed within that driver's education material. I think in an in-person class, you can have more of a direct the teacher can have more of a direct influence on the student. They can talk about personal experiences. They can talk about what they do and what steps they take while they're driving. And they also, the student is put in a position where they have to actually learn more about driver's safety and driving in general. But I definitely think driver's education material can be updated to talk about those new risks while driving. I think having a unit about, putting away technology and not interacting with the console or dashboard as much while you're driving, and just covering different concepts like that w would be pretty helpful and important as well. Then I think maybe an additional module that's more tailored to the risks of driving in a rural community compared to driving in a larger, more urban area, but also benefit students just because there's more of that personalized approach and students are more aware of risks which they might face compared to other people driving in a larger city like Denver or Colorado Springs.
That's very well said, Armaan. And not just that the driving is different depending on where you live, but let's say somebody has learned how to drive in a rural community and now they find themselves in the middle of Denver or in the middle of a large city with a lot of traffic. That is going to be different for them, and vice versa. So teaching those things, teaching the differences, teaching what you are looking for based on the type of road and the type of environment is very important. So, peer leadership is core to SADD's approach. And how do you and your chapter in Colorado mobilize students effectively? Can you describe a recent campaign or an event that you guys participated in?
Yeah, so that definitely emphasizes them just because of how much more effective it is when one of your peers or colleagues tells you about something compared to an adult or teacher. Um, well, one thing which we recently did in Colorado and across SAD as a whole is we had this event called Lights Out for distractions. And this happened during prom season, and it's relatively simple where we just had students place blackout stickers on their phones while they were driving, or for a certain amount of time, let's say 24, 48 hours. And this more or less incentivizes them and kind of takes away their ability to use their phone while they're driving. And I think an important thing to highlight is it necessarily doesn't even have to be that. Just telling students to put their phone in something like their glove box, or just in further away, like in their passenger seat in the back of their car, or just making sure their phone isn't as accessible. Just because our phones tend to have, different alerts or notifications constantly popping up. So just telling students to kind of put the phone away and put it in an area where you won't be able to readily access it and while you're driving. And while we were doing this, we kind of combine it with stories from students, teachers, advisors, whoever it might be, about the experiences which they've had while driving and what effects distracted driving can have on students, on families, and on communities. And the responses to these campaigns are pretty overwhelming. You'll see a lot of students start behaving better, even in the parking lot or while driving, let's say out to lunch or just different things like that. And they'll be more alert and they'll pay more attention to their actions and to the actions of other drivers on the road. So I think just having it doesn't even have to necessarily be a large event. Even a small event can have a pretty large impact on students and on communities as well.
You can use that do not disturb function feature on your phone
Yeah.
or in your vehicle. And that's something that it's not just for teen drivers. Um, I've been driving for 45 years or longer. And I do that now intentionally. I would take my phone and turn something on, do not disturb or something like that, and then put it away because when it pops, when it notifies you, your mind tends to go to, I want to know what's going on, who's texting me, who's calling me. And that's, as you mentioned earlier so eloquently, taking that 1 second or 2 seconds away from the road can lead to a disastrous result. I really commend you for all the work that you and your colleagues are doing. It sounds like a great organization, and it's about destructive decisions, as you're calling them. Yes, it's about decisions that we make in our lives that shape the future of our lives, and there are times when we make decisions that are harmful to ourselves and to others, and that's what you guys are trying to prevent. But we want to participate in that too. So IBTTA, our organization, which is the International Bridge Tunnel and Turnpike Association, is coming together in Colorado, in your state, later on this year. There'll be 1,000 professionals from different parts of the world. What can we do to help you? It's not just it's about helping ourselves and each other. How can we help you with your messaging and with your goals?
I think just continuing to founder partnerships and relationships with youth organizations such as ourselves and maybe even smaller organizations on a local or a city level. I think continuing to just reach out to students, just even meet with them in person. Like I'll be available if anyone wants to meet with me, or there's SADD chapters across every state in the U.S. They can reach out to their local SADD chapter and just interact with them and see what relationships and programs which we can build together. But when it comes specifically to their time in Colorado, I think just continuing to listen to students, listen to their ideas, and help amplify their voices would be beneficial. I think just looking beyond the conference as well, they can continue advocating for youth-informed safety initiatives. So reaching out to students and seeing what ideas or things which we think can be implemented into current programs to further their effectiveness and usage by teens. Just funding different programs within schools and communities themselves as well would be pretty beneficial as well. But I think it all generally boils down to one idea, and that's just continuing to interact with each other. I think as students, we have a lot to learn from adults and transportation professionals such as yourselves about different ideas or programs which might be more effective than the ones we're currently doing. But also just kind of having that two-way relationship as well. Maybe students have specific ideas or have gained knowledge or insight from their peers about different programs which they found more effective or which they've been more willing to partake and participate in. So I think just continuing to build a relationship with each other would be beneficial. And that might just be shooting an email to students such as myself, sending a text message, or even meeting face to face. So I just think continuing to build that relationship is pretty crucial within the coming months or in the coming years. So
I appreciate that, and I agree with you that it's essential because you said that the younger people can learn from those of us who have been around for a very long time. Well, we can also learn from you because it's important that when we communicate a message, that we do it in a way that you can relate to. And sometimes there's that gap, and that gap can be bridged when there's a lot more collaboration and continuing that conversation. So I appreciate what you just said, and that is something that we will do in our organization. And along those lines, I hope that you and perhaps some of your colleagues from SADD will be able to join us during the annual conference in Colorado in October. And, we will stay in touch with you. And so that is possible. Armaan, I truly appreciate your time, your ideas, your thoughts, and I commend you for the work that your organization is doing and the leadership role that you have personally have taken in your organization. You're making a difference when you reach young people who are learning to drive or who have started driving not too long ago, and if you have made an impact on them about how to make a wise decision, you have potentially saved somebody's life, and I commend you for that. You are certainly someone that we in IBTT would call a highway hero. Thank you for your work, and thank you for your time today.